Hey, everybody. This has been quite the year. And as we start to move out of the panic mode of pandemic and coronavirus, and we're moving into like a new phase of this experience, there are a lot of questions that are coming up. So if you're in private practice and maybe you've been working virtually and you're moving back to in-person, maybe you've been working in person for a while and you're trying to figure out like what do I actually want my policies to be? Should I go back to the office at all? Is it safe for me to do that? Should I have my clients still wear masks? Should I offer in-person sessions just to vaccinated people? And if so, do I require vaccinations for people to come in? Do I start the process? Like, there's just so many questions that come up around this issue. So I want to just take a moment to just talk about these things. So start talking about what are appropriate policies, what are things that you can and should consider when you are having people come in and be in a physical space with you in this current and post-ish pandemic world. So I want to hear from you guys. Are these questions, are you already back in the office? Do you have questions about whether to require people to be vaccinated while you are, if they're going to come in for in-person? What about your employees? If you're a group practice, are you having these conversations with your employees? What are the policies for their clients? There's a lot that's here. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, I do want to answer those today and talk through them with you. So do post them in the comments in the chat. But that hasn't even been a thing that we've had to think through and talk through. And so now I want to kind of talk through what that before you go back in the office, even if you're getting a lot of pressure from clients, even if people are like, I would love that. Or even if you fear that if you stay virtual or online, that clients won't come to see you, know that your practice, even kid practices, I'll say, I know that's a scary one too. Your practice is not dependent on you doing in-person sessions. In-person sessions are an option. In most cases, they are not a requirement. And if they are a requirement and that doesn't feel good to you, it's okay to change your business practice. It's okay to change this process so that it's something that really does work for you, right? Because you need to feel good about the clinical work that you're doing and you need to feel safe. And there's lots of different scenarios here. You may have an autoimmune condition. You may have difficult asthma. You may have somebody that you're taking care of that maybe can't get vaccinated. Maybe you still have a lot of fears and anxiety about the new variations coming on. Like, whatever the thing is, I want you to validate that your questions, concerns, things to think about, those are yours. This is your business. And so it's important for you to explore, what do I really want? What do I really want? Because if what you really want and what the clients want, if they're not overlapping, if they're not intersecting, then we need to change something. We need to find where that place is. And I think for therapists, we often default to discounting our own boundaries, discounting our own views, our own wants and needs, and putting clients first. We need to put ourselves and clients first, and we need to find where that point of overlap is. And if it's not with this group of clients, I pinky promise there's another group of clients that really want to work with you and that want to do the work, that you're going to find that alignment. Okay. So I'm getting a question in another spot. Yes, that COVID staff policy is so important. Like, what are we doing with that? So first and foremost, what do you really want? What really works for you? Okay. For you personally, and let's figure that out. The second thing is that you're going to be going in and looking at what's happening for your employees, if you have them, right? So what are they experiencing? What are their feelings about vaccinations? Are they vaccinated? Are they not vaccinated? And you need to have these kinds of conversations, which are really uncomfortable In some cases, we do need to check in with employment lawyers within our state, but it is not, there's lots of stuff coming out about vaccinations and saying like, hey, you can absolutely work for me, but to work in the office, there needs to be an updated vaccination status, right? So we're going to talk through those things, like what really makes sense for you, and then like what's happening for your employees. Do you have employees that maybe are at risk or have concerns? So even if maybe you are someone where you're like, it's not really a big deal to me. Like I'm vaccinated, I feel super safe. But if you do have employees that have risk factors that you don't have or have anxieties that you don't have, let's still like look at that. Again, not to discount your own thing, but just to look at the big picture of something that's going to work for everybody, if possible. Or maybe there needs to be some adjustments. Maybe you have an employee that's going to stay virtual, and that's what they're going to be doing if that works. The third thing is looking at what is that real, like what do your clients need, right? And this can be such a hard thing because there can be like some of your clients, like they just need to go to a place where they don't have to think about masks and it just feels safe, and they're just ready to be over with this whole like pandemic thing, and they just want to get to the other side. And so having to come in and wear a mask with you does not feel good. It doesn't make it feel like it's over. Like they're ready to be on the other side of it. At the same time, if you have clients that are at greater risk, what does that do, right? If, for example, you have somebody who is like, nah, I'm really cool, I don't think I need to get vaccinated. And you're like, okay, I respect that, and I'm vaccinated. How might that impact your other client who maybe is in a high risk category? And this is where it can be very tricky as a business owner to figure out, how do we create a policy that really feels good for me and for my clients, and knowing that you're not going to find something that's going to work for everybody, but we do have to be honest about, I think that it does often tap into our values, right? So sometimes this value of like fairness and where that looks at. Kelly and I, we both have this, that fairness in particular is a big value to her. And so it's something we look at when we make a decision. We were making a decision about doing an in-person event that normally is in person, but we were doing it virtually. And it ultimately came down to fairness, that some of our clients were still in places that were locked down and they were not allowed to travel. And so would it be fair to do an in-person event where we knew that person couldn't be involved? It didn't feel fair to us, right? So you're going to create a process of like, hey, let's figure out what really feels good, aligning with my values in particular, right? Now, if you are at a point where you're saying, for example, hey, what feels safe and comfortable to me for my organization, whether I'm solo or group practice, is that people can come into the office if they are vaccinated, right? Then we start to get into some places where we haven't been before, of saying, hey, do we ask people to send a copy of their card? We ask them for their insurance card. Sometimes we ask them for their driver's license. Is it intrusive to ask them for their immunization material? And I think it's a hard conversation, but we need to be having them, and we need to be exploring how we feel about that. I mean, that's the question, right? That we look at that. Can we do that legally? Can we say, hey, I need to see a copy of this before you come into the office? Now, I want you to think about this in terms of a school, right? In terms of school systems, to say, hey, you have to have this in place to come and be at our school. Like that has been a thing for a long time. And ultimately, like this is your business, right? This is your space to keep safe. And so what you can do is say, hey, here's the requirement to do in-person sessions. I'm happy to keep doing virtual. And if you would prefer to be referred out, I'm happy to do that as well, right? So it's the, like, can we hold them down and grab their vaccination status? No. Can we say, hey, here are the requirements to come into this space. Here are the pieces. I think especially with us that it's not even like at the Costco, right? Where like someone's like having to hold up their PHI. We deal with PHI all the time. Like that's part of who we are. Like we know how to deal with health information. So to say like, hey, can you just bring your vaccination card in, make sure that that's all taken care of. And if for whatever reason in your particular state or for you in particular, you say like, I really only want vaccinated people in here and I don't feel comfortable or confident about requiring the vaccination card, then you have to make a decision because I always go back to the trust but verify, right? Trust but verify. What does that look like? I was in a circle, like socially distanced with people where they had very different feelings than I did about COVID and mask requirements. And so they were talking about how their people that they know have found these masks that look like masks, but they actually have mesh in them. And so they're specifically designed to look like an appropriate mask, but they're not an appropriate mask. And that is so that they can circumvent the mask requirements because they don't agree with it. Like they have done their own research. They don't agree with the mask requirement. And so in order to go to Costco, in order to do these things, they have created an option. Now, how do we feel about that? If someone's going to create a mask that does that, what are the odds that people are going to create fake vaccination cards? I'm not sure. So I think ultimately we do have to look at our particular risk factors and the people in our family and decide, is the risk worth it to go back into office? And what does that look like for my clients? Are there people that if they were concerned about it, maybe those are people that I need to refer out based on my risk factors, right? So for example, I had people in my life with COVID where I was less concerned about contracting or having long-term effects of COVID. I have health privilege. However, I had people in my life who were very high risk. So I took pretty strict precautions around COVID because of the other people in my life who did not have that health privilege. So that's what I need to do, right? I did that for the people in my life. I did that for the community around me. Like that was part of what I did. And so we're in this sticky place, right, of exploring these things and talking through it. I see some questions popping up. It's Anna. Who am I? My name is Miranda Palmer. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in California. And I have been consulting with therapists in private practice since 2007. So I've been around a while. So yeah, that's who I am. I think that's a great question. And I think having these conversations and figuring out where you land, and even before you go and search, oh, well, what do people think about the legalities of asking for people's vaccination records? If we are working with someone who has an eating disorder, for example, there's a conversation of like, do I require someone to sign a release of information so I can talk to their primary care physician or so I can work with a registered dietitian? People make those determinations based on wanting to provide quality care. You want to provide quality care to your clients, to all of your clients. I think you get to create processes that work. But of course, then once you kind of start to line out what do I really want, then we start to research in our particular state and jurisdiction, are there any other issues? Are there any things that might get in the way of that legally? And then we take that policy into an attorney in our area, someone who understands this, particularly in our jurisdiction, and we have them review the policy and see if there are things that we can tweak. But I think if you start from a place of fear about creating a policy and what you really want, then I think sometimes we don't create any policy at all, and then we start to get into this uncomfortable place. Sorry, I have the questions over here. I see small children only. I'm excited to go back in the office after the next round of children can be vaccinated. I'd like to require vaccinations due to the inability to sterilize all the toys between sessions. I'm willing to see unvaccinated children virtually, but would like to require vaccinations to come to the playroom. Can I do that? That's the piece. I want you to create a policy, start writing it out, go through that process. What would that look like? Hey, it may even look like just like we often will have people sign a release to work with kids. to work with their primary care physician to say, here's the piece. And then again, hey, can you bring in the card? Here's the part I've signed up this piece. And just like we verify their insurance, there's a reason, right, that we don't just say, what's your insurance information? And we don't ask for the card. We ask for the card because we need to verify the information in order to do this. So from my perspective, I think in most states, and most jurisdictions, you're going to be able to do this and create a policy, but the policy needs to be fair and across the board. And once you create the policy, then go and have it looked over by an attorney. Again, do not go straight to an attorney and say, create a policy for me in my practice about COVID vaccination and asking for them, because it will be way more expensive. Like, it will cost you so much more money. So like, let's save some money. And you really need to get clear about what you're doing and what feels good for you in particular, right? Again, these are just the pieces. This is not something, and will there be families that say like, hey, that doesn't feel good to me? Absolutely. Will there be families that say, I really appreciate that. That makes me feel safer? Absolutely. Right? So know that while some of the decisions that you make as a policy, if you make a policy to say, you know what, everyone can come in, it's totally fine whether you're vaccinated or not, there's going to be families that aren't going to feel safe, and vice versa. So ultimately, I want you to start with you and your gut and your intuition as a starting point. Okay? Yeah. And then I would like to stay remote. I like the flexibility. That's okay. Isn't that wonderful? There's a lot of people that really like being remote, and it's okay to not go back in the office. It's okay to say, hey, this works better for me. I like this. My clients like this. You may need to look at your marketing and what you're doing out in the world. It may be that you were marketing in such a way in the past that was more focused on people who want to come into the office. And to attract new clients, you may need to like shift that over a little bit in terms of your marketing, of reaching out to the people that need that in particular. Yeah. And yeah, sometimes the policies aren't win-win, right? There's not going to be a perfect policy or a perfect reaction, right? The only perfect thing that I could come up with is if COVID and Corona just went away tomorrow, right? It just disappeared off the planet. That'd be easy. But everything else is going to be nuanced. It's going to be, ultimately, this is your business. This is why I think this is one reason why you created a business, is to do things that really work for you, not to be in a place of like doing stuff that didn't feel good, that didn't feel safe. You want to feel safe in your private practice. You want your clients to feel safe. You want to create something that you're not stressed about. So that's the piece, right? We have to really look at these pieces and create something that really makes sense, and know that it's okay if our policy doesn't serve everybody, because there's not going to be a policy that's going to serve everybody. I mean, even look at the way that all of our states and jurisdictions reacted to coronavirus and to this process. Like, it's very different, and with varying levels of success. So really go back and think about, again, what makes sense to you, what feels good to you, what feels safe to you, right? What's happening for your employees? If you have employees, is there safety issues there? Then we look at what's happening for our clients, and we see if there's no overlap, right? If what feels safe and good to us is not what feels safe and good to our clients, it means not just that we go, well, I have to throw out my needs and desires out the window and then move over to here. It may mean that, like, oh, I need to look at how to bring in the kind of clients that work in where there is overlap in values, right? When there's overlap in like what we're looking for and what makes sense to us. As an intern about to graduate, I'm still learning how to advocate for myself as a therapist. Thanks for helping me set my future expectations. Yes, this is something that we are consistently learning at every aspect of our career, whether you are just starting out or you've been in practice for 10 or 15 or 35 years. This aspect of getting really clear, connecting in with our intuition, connecting in with like what we really want, and then translating that into a business and business policies and procedures that really make sense for us, like, this is really important. Okay. So any final questions, or what are your takeaways? I'd love to hear in the comment about this conversation. What are the things that you're like, oh my gosh, that really makes sense to me, or like, that's still fuzzy? And again, I hear you in terms of, wouldn't it be great if I could come on as an attorney that worked in every jurisdiction and every state, in the United States, and say, here's what you can do. It totally works no matter where you're at, no matter what might change or not change from the CDC, like all of that kind of thing. There's not going to be a perfect answer there. But if we start with our intuition, if we start with where we're at, and we create a policy that really does feel good and safe for us, then we can then go and start exploring and making adjustments to it and seeing, is there a way to align that? Maybe just written as is, it's exactly what you need, totally works, fabulous. If it needs a little tweak, okay. If it needs a big tweak, then you get to make the decision of like, well, maybe I'm going to stay virtual, right? Maybe that's it. Maybe it's better for me in particular. Okay. All right, guys. Well, until next time, we're here for you. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe, follow us. Like, we're here for you. We have these conversations. We have lots of resources coming up. We actually just did a amazing training on all things like tax, S Corp, LLC, PLLC. We paid for this expert to come in and do a free training. It's available for the next 7 days. And the training, like, honestly, like, I was blown away. It was so good, like, so good. He really talked about this and explained this in a way that even people who have had LLCs or PLLCs with S Corp designations, who kind of have done this for a long time, were like, wow, I understand this more deeply. He has the images and all the things. So if you haven't checked that out, go and check that out. You can go to zennyme.com and click on the little events tab, and you'll be able to grab that. But yeah, it's awesome. All right. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.